Which defenses are the ones that you should trust in your championship game? Let's find out. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre, here to help you once again get that W with some team defense special team streaming options. With team defenses, a lot of times matchup matters a lot more than just talent, record, whatever it is. Even the best defenses can have bad matchups and vice versa. So let's start with my first choice. Again, if they're out there, you're looking to pick up a defense with a strong matchup, well, look at the Giants this week. Now, again, the Giants aren't a defense that has been elite this year. They started out real strong first half of the year. They've been kind of struggling, at least relative to the way they had been performed. Not a terrible defense, of course, but they've been giving up a lot on the ground and not what you would call a shutdown defense, not a team defense that is highly owned in fantasy because kind of inconsistent. So why would you want to go with the Giants? Well, obviously, the opponent, they're facing the Indianapolis Colts, who I think we can officially say now are just a complete train wreck, dumpster fire, whatever you want to call it. So last week, if you were unfortunate enough to watch that game on Monday night, the Colts, of course, didn't use their best quarterback with Matt Ryan. He's benched for being, well, not that he was that great, but they wanted to go try something different, see how Nick Foles would work out. Well, how'd that work out? He threw 3 interceptions, didn't lead the team to any scores. And how did it work out with Deion Jackson, the guy who'd been really effective at some spots earlier this year, filling in for Jonathan Taylor? Well, he didn't even barely touch the ball. Of course, they went with Zach Moss instead. Look, Zach Moss wasn't terrible or anything like that, but this team is rolling out now second and third stringers. They're just doing anything. It doesn't even seem to have rhyme or reason. And Nick Foles was bad enough last week that they committed to him starting again this week. So you can look forward to that if you're a Colts fan. Now, if you're a Giants fan, you should be pretty happy to get the W. But also, if you got the Giants defense, you know what you're in store for. The turnovers are definitely in play for you. Look, this Colts team on the season has scored the second fewest points in the National Football League, averaging 16.5 points per game. So most scoring settings on fantasy do at least put some emphasis on points allowed. Some give big bonuses for, limiting the opponent to under 10 points or whatever it is. Definitely a good chance for one of those big bonuses here. Doubtful the Colts scored too many points, if any. And sacks, well, only the Denver Broncos have given up more sacks than the Colts this season. And the Colts have turned the ball over, not just through interceptions, not just Nick Foles. On the whole, this season, the Colts have turned the ball over more on offense than any team. And they have a pretty sizable lead there, 30 turnovers. The next closest is 24. So there's no reason not to want to stream against the Colts this week and maybe next, depending on if you still play next week. Giants kind of by default have to be the top streaming option this week. Next up, probably no surprise, the team that plays Houston, and this week it happens to be Jacksonville. So, Jacksonville's defense, again, has not really been that great this year, and they've given up chunks of points at times. Last week alone, you saw give up a ton of points to the Cowboys, but this is Houston. You don't have to worry about that happening. Now, I get that Houston has been better in recent weeks. They actually somehow managed to win a game last week, and they really fought and almost pull out upsets against both the Chiefs and the Cowboys, two of the best teams in the NFL. I mean, give credit to Lovie Smith now, 15 weeks into the season, 16 weeks later for getting a second win. But at least they're fighting. At least they haven't given up. But they're still going to turn the ball over. They're still going to take sacks, and they're not going to put up that many points. So Houston on the season, third fewest points scored. They average 17 a game. They have the second most turnovers behind only the Colts, who we talked about, and the most interceptions thrown on the season. Davis Mills is still the quarterback, along with, I guess, sometimes Jeff Driscoll. Doesn't matter. They're going to take sacks. Interceptions will be thrown. They're not going to score much. Jacksonville probably will go out and put out a lead. Look, this is the one thing you might say, this could be a game where you feel an upset coming because Jacksonville technically doesn't have to win this game, even though they should easily, because it don't really just matter what happens next week against Tennessee. But Doug Peterson said, look, I want to win. We're going to go out there and play. Every game matters, which is really the opinion that every coach should have. But Jacksonville, I don't think they're just going to rollover. They're not resting their starters or anybody unless they're actually hurt. They're going to put the gas pedal on full throttle here. They're going to put up points. Houston will have to fight to actually score against Jacksonville. And look, I don't love Jacksonville as a high-end option because, again, they're not a defense that ever really shuts anybody down, but they do have some upside as far as getting turnovers, and that's something you should definitely be interested in. All right, next up is a defense that I really feel shouldn't even be just a streaming option at this point. There really should be a lot more teams that own the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's actually surprising. I feel like I haven't heard a lot of people even talk about the Steelers because they started out the season so badly and the whole quarterback thing, and they just seem like they're a team that you can forget about. I actually didn't even realize this until I looked into it. The Steelers have won 5 of their last 7 games, and they won 4 of their last 5. A lot of it on the strength of their defense. And somehow the Steelers have snuck back into the playoff race. And look, with the Titans free falling, the Dolphins, not even able to get a win, and now with Tua out, the Jets, who knows what's happening there. It's not inconceivable that the Steelers somehow sneak into that final playoff spot. But anyways, don't care about that. Just in terms of fantasy, I'm telling you, the Steelers have been really good. And of course, it's mainly because their defense, not that their offense is doing great things. They've been allowing, in this span, the last few games I've talked about, where they keep winning 15 points per game. That's it. And no team has scored more than 17. Now, the matchup here is interesting because it's a road game at Baltimore. Now, Baltimore, their offense is not that good. Lamar Jackson doesn't look like he's going to play. So you still got Tyler Huntley. You still have no receivers that you have to worry about. You have a Dobbins-Edwards running back duo that's just okay. They're pretty efficient, but not anybody who's going to put up huge scoring totals on the week. But what's interesting is these two teams just played a couple of weeks ago in Week 14, and that one loss that Pittsburgh has had over the past 5 games, it was to Baltimore. But here's the thing. It was not because of their defense. It was because of Mitch Trubisky. That was the game where Trubisky had to come in and start, and he threw 3 interceptions. And even then, that was the game where, Steelers gave up 17 points. Okay, I'm not worried about Baltimore putting up a lot of points because they're not doing that. The Steelers, yeah, it's a road game, but still, this is going to be a low-scoring game on both sides. If you're in a league where it's more of an emphasis on points allowed, I really like Pittsburgh. With Watt back in there healthy, they're always good for some sacks. So I like the Steelers, and you should probably pay more attention to them in terms of how they're going to be going forward next week if you still play, and next season. I think this defense could be a top 10 squad. And then I have to admit, the New England Patriots look like a solid choice this week because they're playing the Dolphins, will be without Tua. So these teams, of course, being division rivals, they've already played once, but I think you can almost forget about that when that happened. It was back in Week 1. It was the season opener, and, we didn't really know what this new Mike McDaniel offense was going to look like. It wasn't really fully fleshed out. Neither of these teams, Ramondre Stevenson was still splitting carries at that point. But no Tua this week. We know that. Teddy Bridgewater, he's fine. He's a capable backup, but he's not Tua. And you know what? I don't feel like they're going to be able to put up a lot of points here because they've been struggling even with Tua the last 3 weeks. And this is a road game. It's going to be cold. It's going to be in Foxborough. It's a pretty good defense. Not the best Patriots defense we've seen over the past few years, but they're still not a defense that's going to get embarrassed. Look, both these teams need this win, right, to stay in the playoff hunt. The Patriots will not go away quietly. As far as who wins, look, I can't dismiss the Patriots outright, even though Miami's more talented and should pull out a victory. Miami could easily let down again. They only scored 20 points against the Patriots back in Week 1. Again, that was with Tua. The Patriots probably won't give up a ton of points in this game, and they do get a lot of sacks on the season. Only one team defense has gotten more sacks than the Patriots. They got that duo. They got Matt Judon and Josh Uche have been a dynamic duo, piling up sacks lately. Teddy, not the most nimble-footed quarterback. You can count on him. So if your league actually counts sacks for more than a point, some go for 2 or even 3 points per sack. You know what? Patriots might actually be one of your better options this week. And the last team defense I'm going to recommend is the Commanders. So Washington, if you remember early in the year, this was a defense you wanted no part of. The first 3 weeks, scoring a lot, but also giving up a ton of points. It looked like it was going to be a lost season for them, but things have changed. So they're controlling the ball more on the ground. They actually have a running game, and the defense has definitely tightened up. And that was even before Chase Young came back healthy. So credit to Ron Rivera for getting that squad right. The defense has been really good. Now, I know they just got blown up by the 49ers, gave up 37 points to them, but that's the Niners. Look, the Niners at this point might be favorite for the Super Bowl coming out of the NFC. In the previous 10 games for the Niners, put up those points on them, they hadn't allowed more than 21 points 10 straight games. They've been pretty good on defense, and you know that they face Cleveland this week. That right there is surprisingly a great matchup. Deshaun Watson has somehow found a way to make that Browns offense significantly worse. In 3 games since he's been back, they're averaging 11 points per game. 3 games, 3 offensive touchdowns total. That's it. This team is not putting up points. They're going now on the road. Washington is a team, again, that wants to win, needs to win, because they're also in the playoff hunt. Cleveland has nothing to play for. Let's face it. They really don't. I'm not saying that they're going to fold, but I guess they've been trying. Even if they've been trying hard the last couple of games, it doesn't show because they haven't been putting up much of a fight on offense, at least. Now, Washington isn't a team that gets a lot of turnovers. Only 16 on the whole season. That's bottom 10. So again, if your league puts a big emphasis on interceptions, fumble recoveries, if that's what you're looking for that massive upside, defense that can pile up points here and, get you those big turnover games, maybe defense touchdown, Washington might not be the best option because Watson, as ineffective as he's been, it's not like he's throwing multiple interceptions per game or anything like that. But you're okay on sacks. Washington is pretty good in terms of getting sacks. And again, limiting points, I think that's a given since they're facing Cleveland. Those are the team defenses we're looking at. If you need a playoff streamer, especially if it's your championship game, you want to always get the edge that you need to win. That's why we're here for you. We have start sit advice at every position. Everything you need is always right here in our Week 17 playlist.